This week's show brought to you by SCAD, Scott Countyans Against Drugs. Welcome everybody to the Scott County Cardinals News Graphic Football Coaches Show, heading into Week 6, and Week 6 means district games. Big one coming up. We start Friday night at Bryan Station High School, 7:30 to kick off in Lexington. We'll get to the defenders in a minute. They're 0-4, but that's kind of deceiving. They'll be a tougher opponent than that. We have to look back first, whether we want to or not, at the LaSalle game at home last Friday night, actually Thursday night at Toyota Stadium. Things moved up a day. I know there are people that will say, well, maybe that was a factor, if they'd had another day to prepare for LaSalle. You see me shaking my head, no. I think Coach McKee will agree with that as well. He told me flat out if we played again next week, the score might be the same, and I tend to agree with him. Plus, if they'd had another day to prepare, LaSalle might have even been more ready for what happened, which was a pretty sound thrashing. They scored the first 2 touchdowns of the game. Scott County got back into it a little bit on the last play of the first quarter on a 4th down, a little fade to Glenn Covington, who made an amazing catch in the corner of the end zone to cut it to 14-7. Scott County's offense really never threatened again in a 37-7 loss. Quarterback MJ Horton of LaSalle. He's been offered by UK and Louisville already, so he's pretty serious. 4 touchdowns, 2 rushing, 2 passing. And they have a running back named Cam Porter who's been offered by Northwestern as well. They've got some D1 future players on their defense. This was probably the most talented team Scott County's played. You could say maybe the 15 and 16 Lafayette teams that were thrown in their side were pretty talented in terms of their future college potential. But I don't think that across the board they were as strong as LaSalle, as one of the top teams in Ohio came down and put it on the cards. And one thing Coach McKee says a lot is it's never as bad as it looks and never as good as it looks. You're never as good as you think you are. Never as bad as you think you are. And I think that applies to this team. After coming off the win at Moeller, a lot of happy feelings. Hey, this was the biggest win in the history of the program, at least regular season. Obviously, 2 state titles come above that. But everybody was patting each other on the back and, wow, what a great thing. And then you have to, the reality is you have to come back home and play a team that's even better than that, I think most people think, is LaSalle. And just a tough challenge on a short week. A different type of offense, spread offense as opposed to more traditional I formation that you saw a lot of from Moeller. So just a perfect storm, or maybe a bad analogy given the reasons that the game was moved up. But just didn't work out for Scott County as they go to 4-1 on the season. And now head into the district schedule, which is all important. It's the reason you play these Ohio opponents, is to get ready for Bryan Station, Henry Clay, Dunbar, Frederick Douglass, all in a row, which will determine ultimately your playoff fate, whether or not you host 1 game at home, 2 games at home, perhaps even looking way down the line at a state semifinal game that could be at home as well. But you got to run the table in those games, and it's easier said than done. Everybody's talking about Frederick Douglass down the road, but these first couple of games are dangerous. Bryan Station with Jalen Burbage at quarterback. All-purpose guy, just rolled up the yards last week against Tate's Creek, albeit in a 49-38 loss. But he can do it all: run, pass, return kicks. You may remember that last year Bryan Station tried to run the ball with its tailback and drain the clock and have a lot of 9-minute drives early in the game. It didn't work. It worked for a while. Scott County pulled out a 49-13 victory in that one. Cards should be favored on Friday night, but the defense has got to watch out for a lot of things. Getting to that game and looking back on the LaSalle game with Coach McKee, obviously he's talked a lot about humble pie this week. We'll have him expand on those thoughts and give a lot of credit to the upcoming opponent, as he doesn't want anybody overlooking this Bryan Station team. Let's see what Coach McKee had to say. LaSalle was an athletic, deep opponent on the heels of the big win over Moeller.
Well, I think anytime you lose, you're always quick to find the things you could do better. But, and what I've found is, and I feel like obviously I could have done a better job preparing the kids. And ultimately the preparation of the team is on me as a head coach. And I didn't do a real good job. Without getting into any of the specifics of it, though, you got to give your opponent credit. I mean, my son's our quarterback. He's a great kid, but he's no comparison to their quarterback. He's been offered by Kentucky and Louisville. So we were going against an SEC quarterback. You could debate which one of our running backs is the best, but Their running back's been offered by Northwestern, so our running back, probably each one of their parents would say they're the best one, but none of them are going to have been offered by Northwestern. So, we're going against an SEC quarterback and a Big Ten running back, and we didn't get them stopped. And then offensively, we never moved the ball, and then kicking game-wise was total domination. So it was total domination from beginning to end in all three phases of the game.
Bryan Station's offense, led by quarterback Jalen Burbage and receiver Kendrick Curry, is capable of hurting Scott County as well.
Your pride got hurt, and you got to eat some humble pie. Now, the manner in which you take it and eat, it's up to you. And what you do with your humble pie is up to you. So it's up to us. If we'd have won the game, it's up to us to use it for a positive. When you lose the game, whatever happens in the outcome of the game, you can't change it. And, it's always a little bit of a good circling of the wagons when you lose. Everybody's got a lot of answers when you do. You should run this offense, that offense, this defense. Why are you playing man? You ought to be playing zone. Why are you playing zone? You ought to be playing man. Why are you running this? Why aren't you running that? And so it really should help us come together. But now Bryan Station's good. This is the best team they've had in several years. Their offense is very good. I think Burbage probably is not as good as the kid that we saw last week, but he's in the same general category. He's a dual threat guy. And I've always felt like and I'm not saying that a drop back passer is easy to defend, a good one. It's not. Peyton Manning and Tom Brady are drop back passers. But at the high school level for us, maybe it's our defensive scheme, maybe it's our mentality, maybe it's whatever it is, but I've always felt like as a coach, the hardest guy to defend is the dual threat guy. The guy that can run it and throw it both effectively. Now, sometimes you'll get a guy they say he's dual threat, but he can't throw worth 2 cents. So he's really not, he's running quarterback. And sometimes you'll get a guy that say he's dual threat, but he's 5'2" in the 40. He's really not. He might gain 10 yards if there's a big opening. But to really get a guy that can throw it accurately and run it is very, very tough to defend.
The first half of the schedule prepared the Cards well for what lies ahead in the district.
You need to see everything you can see because that's high school. That's the nature of high school football. You got to be able to defend a power eye. You got to be able to defend empty. You got to be able to defend a quarterback who's never going to run. You got to be able to defend one who's going to run all the time. And that's what makes coaching defensive football in high school tough.
All 4 district opponents will pose a challenge to the Cardinals.
Absolutely. It's one game at a time for us. We have great respect for Bryan Station. We've played them for over 20-some years, and, they've beaten us. We've had a lot of great games with them. We've beaten them. We have tremendous respect for Henry Clay. We have tremendous respect for Frederick Douglass and Paul Dunbar. All 4 of those teams have had very strong teams at some point in their career, whether their career's 2 years or 50 years. And so we just take it one game at a time and worry, number one, the most about ourselves. How can we be better this Friday than we were last Friday? And then number 2, respecting the game at hand. All you can ever be is 1-0. You can't play any more than the game you got.
All right, that was Coach McKee, and never know what you're going to get out of Coach, but he was all business this week after the loss. Sometimes these losses are as humbling for coaches as they are for players, and he'd be the first to admit. It got to put you in your place and put you back on your heels and get you back to basics. And he was all business on Tuesday, certainly, and I expect the Cards to be all business on Friday night in Lexington. Talked to a couple of the senior players, as we always do. They were part of that defense that had to deal with the LaSalle weapons the other night. Had some success at times, but really just struggled to get off the field on 3rd down. Be interesting to see how they handle a similar opponent this week in terms of the athletic ability with Jalen Burbage. But we spoke with Winston Riebel and Adam Grieving, a couple of guys who've had a kind of a long journey to get to where they are in the senior starting lineup. Grieving sat out a year earlier in his high school career. Riebel kind of moved into the system last year and got into that rotation, and he's been a star many times during this first half of the year. Let's see what Winston and Adam had to say about last week and the game at Bryan Station. The players see ample room for improvement after the LaSalle defeat.
I think it just puts everything into perspective. Like, you're going to lose some, you're going to win some. So I think it just fires up the guys, and we'll be ready for the rest of the game.
Defense, we got to lock in, stop the pass, get a better pass rush. Offense, blocking, taking care of our assignments, and special teams, we have to win the hidden yardage.
Scott County's recent domination of Bryan Station shouldn't suggest an easy win.
Yeah, we can't underestimate anybody. We got to come out, treat it just like any other game, day by day, week by week. We gotta beat everybody 1 week at a time.
They all have a bunch of like good athletes. Like Henry Clay's got Langston, Bryan Station has Jalen and Kendrick, and Dunbar. They have a bunch of good guys, and Douglas. They're going to be a tough team, but we know how important it is to have home field in the playoffs. So we'll be ready and come out.